Welcome back to Festival of Place, the Pineapples, in association with Design Council. As you know, this is a unique event where we bring together developers, designers and placemakers from across the built environment to share their work as they vie to win one of those precious golden pineapples for place. This is the second session of the Place of the Year category, and our places here today are vying to demonstrate how they've excelled in creating a mixed-use neighbourhood. We've got four projects shortlisted, and each team has just 10 minutes to present, and then our judges have 10 minutes to ask those vital questions afterwards. To keep things fair, I'm keeping a close eye on the clock, so I'll let you know when there's 1 minute to go. To our audience, don't forget that you can use those emojis just at the bottom here to encourage our speakers and share your appreciation. And if you want to, you can use the chat or the Q&A box just to the side here to make any comments or ask any questions that you might have. So we'd love to have you engaging if you'd like to do that. We'll be meeting the judges in just a moment, but I will take just a second now to introduce you so that you know who they are. We've got Christopher Arthey with us, Planning and Development Manager at Axiom Developments Limited. Christopher's a surveyor with a postgrad degree in international real estate and marketing, sales and project management experience to boot. Hazel Rounding, Managing Director of shedkm. Hazel specialises in leading multidisciplinary teams and creating master planning solutions and working closely with the commercial and client teams from concept right through to occupation. And Dominic Spray, who is Design Director and Architect at Hadley Property Group. Dominic is an experienced chartered accountant who has particular interest in international trends and sustainable commercial design-led solutions. So thank you very much indeed to all our dedicated judges.
I'm not sure if I'm an accountant, sorry.
Did I just say accountant?
Yeah.
I said that you were a multi-skilled...
Might be a better career move.
Lockdown career move. Architect, of course. I meant to say architect. So thank you for picking me up there. So without further ado, we're going to move straight on to our next finalist, our third finalist of the day, MediaCityUK Salford. It's been 10 years since the first TV show was broadcast from a cluster of mixed-use buildings at MediaCityUK, and a decade on, 8,000 people work within this creative digital and tech jobs at MediaCity within a thriving 200-strong SME community. So to tell us more, please welcome our presenter, Josie Cahill from MediaCityUK. Josie, we're delighted to have you here with us this morning. Over to you.
Hi, thank you everyone. I'll just share my screen. Okay, so as Emma touched on, it's been 11 years since the first phase of Media City was completed and 10 years since the first TV show was broadcast from there. So firstly, it was the new home of the BBC in the North to help them better reach audiences across the region. But in a decade, it has evolved from a cluster of buildings to a vibrant community where people live, work, study, and increasingly choose to spend their leisure time there. So we've got a community of 8,000 workers, 2,000 residents, 10,000 students, and 5 million annual visitors. Media City was always intended to be a true mixed-use place which welcomes local citizens through a vibrant visitor destination and extensive public realm and gardens, and it was never just going to be a business park. And this has created a direct link in improving Salford's socioeconomic stats and adding additional value to our society by creating new jobs, a university campus on site, a university technical college, safer and better infrastructure and new homes. Our ambition around the business destination has accelerated over the last year as we've seen a changing relationship with the place, which I'll touch on later, and with the appointment of my role as place director and the creation of a place team. Since then, we've conducted a huge research project talking to both stakeholders and local people, which has resulted in a renewed place brand for Media City and a set of corresponding pillars to help guide all our placemaking activity, ensuring it chimes with what people have told us is most important for them, what matters to people even more post-pandemic, access to green space, community, play, multimodal transport options, etc. And you'll see those pillars appearing throughout this presentation. So here's a site map that, sorry, is a little bit small on that screen, but hopefully gives you a little bit more context. You can see what makes up the community and the amenities. Hotels, F&B, retail, transport are located on the banks of the Manchester Ship Canal. We're the home of BBC North, which includes BBC Breakfast, BBC Sport, BBC Children's, Radio 5 Live, the BBC Philharmonic Orchestra, and even more departments moving out of London to Media City over the next couple of years. Dock 10 Studios in the middle, which houses the largest television studio in Europe, and also has 10 other television studios, which broadcast the nation's best TV shows, including Countdown, The Voice, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and landmark shows such as Match of the Day and Blue Peter. We've got ITV in Coronation Street. Over the other side of Dock 9, we've got the Quayside Shopping Centre with an on-site cinema and waterfront leisure club, and we're also home to the Lowry Theatre and Arts Centre, housing the largest collection of Lowry paintings, and of course also the Imperial War Museum North. With the design of Media City, the consideration to the design and layout of Media City is pretty unique. So the buildings and the spaces follow a curve designed to follow the points on the compass from the compass room at the top of the Lowry Arts Centre, and that axis allows us to, in future development phases, sort of expand in that way. And that ambition, that design ambition, was always to create a city with culture and place at its core, and that remains 10 years on. So at Media City, we feel one of our main USPs is a balanced city life. We have a dedicated estates and operational team who curate and maintain a space which promotes well-being, with waterfront views and extensive award-winning gardens, picnic benches and deck chairs placed within them. Media City is a place you can find calm and space to breathe. And we've recently been awarded a Green Flag Award for the second year in a row. We offer a balanced version of urban life, the benefits of city living with a neighbourhood feel, a quieter pace of life and access to the green and the blue, and an ethos that prioritises sustainability. We have traffic-free, pedestrianised spaces that give you room to walk, run and cycle, and we promote lots of different health and wellbeing interventions with outdoor meditation and yoga sessions, swimming in the docks or triathlon, so a place that naturally encourages health and wellbeing. Sustainability and social value is extremely important to us. We have our own grassroots sustainability and social value network made up of businesses and residents who want to positively impact our community. And in normal times, we have the highest percentage of people who commute to work by bike in Greater Manchester. We've recently won the Gold Award for Transport from Greater Manchester for Sustainable Cycle Initiatives, and we have a platinum level certification from Cycle Score as well. We're a place that owns its history. We're a place that's built on the past, on a history of innovation and industry. And the reason I'm telling you this is that all our research has told us that history is incredibly important to local people. Media City has been built on the banks of the Ship Canal, and lots of local people's families have worked on the Salford docks. And increasingly, telling the story of our history connects local people to us. It gives us a soul and roots, and we do this in lots of ways. From the way we brand our projects, such as the Dock Box and the Docks initiatives that I'll come on to some of our seating, which has been made out of repurposed stone from the old original docklands. I touched on this earlier. We're really lucky to be in a place which makes and exports thousands of hours of global content every year, but also invites local people in to take part in tours and studio audiences. And we're a creative place. We're a creative community. What we do is diverse, but what unites us is creativity. And creativity runs through the core of everything we do in our placemaking interventions and activity. We partner with local artists, creatives and designers to deliver new projects that aim to give back to our community. And a great example of this is Box on the Docks, which we worked on with Wayne Hemingway and Hemingway Design. It started as a response to the pandemic last year, where we worked with local artists to transform 30 sheds and greenhouses into socially distanced dining pods. But as well as supporting local creative and hospitality, it kind of created human scale spaces and interesting and attractive settings to dwell in the gardens. And this summer we'll work with local arts organisation Keys Culture to install a large sculpture by the artist Liz West on our waterfront steps, creating another free piece of public art for people to enjoy, and then further activating that space and increasing dwell time. We know that diverse talent matters, but we know that young local people can find it hard to get a foothold, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds. So we work with our partners such as the BBC, the University of Salford, ITV and the Lowry to lead a joint approach to building the creative workforce of the future and ensure that we create jobs and opportunities for local people. And according to a recent report by KPMG, employment in the creative and digital sector has seen a growth of 142% between 2010 and 2019, and the number of digital and creative businesses has grown by 70%. We're a place that aims to entertain, and throughout the pandemic we've seen a changing visitor relationship with Media City. Our footfall data tells we are now busier at the weekends than we were before the pandemic, and so the relationship with the place is completely inverted. So previously we were busier in the week and quieter at the weekend. Now it's the opposite way round. And we think there's lots of reasons for this. We have space, access to the green and the blue, and we're a safe and spacious place for all, and that's why it's even more important we maintain the momentum. We are a place where there's always lots to see and do, where businesses are integrated with retail and leisure, and imaginative public realm encourages people to spend time, socialise and interact whatever the weather. We embed social media into all our social value, into all our placemaking initiatives. I'm acutely aware that Media City is bordered by areas of deprivation in Salford, so it's vital that we deliver spaces and activities that suit all people and all budgets. Just one example of this is that through Box on the Docks, we worked with the Salford Food Bank and we transformed a shed into a food collection box, and by putting a PR focus on that, we've hugely upped the collections for the food bank. We aim to create positive and inspiring spaces for everyone to enjoy. We focus on this even more in the last year, adding a richer mix of independent F&B to add to our bigger brands and cultural attractions, whilst continuing to work closely with our estates and security team to create a safe, spacious destination that's enjoyable and accessible for all. And we have plans on further investment in place infrastructure to create an even richer public realm through wayfinding and public space interventions that add drama, encourage play, and add to a sense of place. We've embraced the shift in how our public realm spaces are being used and the growing visitor destination. Next week, we're set to announce our Summer at Media City campaign with the tagline, "A Happy Place to Play." Supporting the National Summer of Play initiative, we'll work again with local artists. We'll use our large piazza as a canvas and install floor markings to encourage positive interactions with the space, from street games to picnic areas. And we're installing increased number of seating and picnic tables in and around our piazza and gardens. A place for everyone is at the heart of our place strategy, and we'll continue to foster this ambition to deliver exciting and creative infrastructure and activity for all our audiences, where they live, work, study, or play at Media City. And that's it for me. I did it within the time, it turns out, which is great.
You did fantastic. Thank you very much.
I was aware I was a little bit late on as well, so I thought I'd better ramble through it.
No, that's fantastic. And you know what? Finishing slightly early means that the judges get a couple of extra minutes for questions. So that is definitely a good thing to do. So much to get our teeth into there. I'm going to first bring on Hazel, who I know has been to visit. So I'm sure we'll have thoughts and questions both from her visit and from your presentation. So welcome, Hazel. If I can ask our judges to switch their cameras back on so we can see your lovely smiling faces. Perfect. Great. So Hazel, over to you. Kick off the questions. I think we're struggling to hear you, Hazel, so I don't know whether you're muted or.
Still can't hear you.
No, you're quiet.
Can't.
Possibly your headphones, because you're not muted on screen actually. Give it a try again. No, we've lost you. Well, I tell you what we will do just for a minute, because I don't want time to tick away. I'll bring in Dominic quickly, and we'll see if we can just resolve those sound issues with Hazel. If necessary, we can use the question box to pose your question, Hazel. Dominic, over to you.
Hi, Josie.
Hiya.
Hi. Yeah, I went up to Manchester for the day actually and visited the site, so I was very excited about that, and it was a great day out and amazing to see what's going on in Manchester generally.
Yeah.
And it was a really interesting journey out on the tram out to Media City, and you get that sense of how it sits within the city. I mean, one of the things that is incredibly striking and impressive is just the scale of the regeneration and the scale of the existing infrastructure, the ship canal and everything that's there already. I was very interested when I was there about the kind of the box on the docks and the works you've done with Hemingway and the sort of the idea of a human scale, and whether has that been an issue? I mean, you've obviously been brought in to sort of address that possibly. I don't know, and I'm just interested to know whether there was that's been part of the feedback you've got from people about the sort of size of the space. I mean, it's very difficult to gauge because of the way COVID's had an impact on the way people use spaces these days. And obviously I was only there for a day. There's a lot of people working there normally. But that was the thing that was of most interest to me.
Yeah, I think it is a really interesting point, and it did come back in some of the research as well that we did. I mean, the piazza particularly, is a huge, I mean, it holds sort of 8,000 people, is a huge open space, and actually it can be difficult to programme because we don't always have the best weather in Manchester. So yeah, initiatives like Box on the Docks and what we're doing in this summer with sort of floor markings with artists on the piazza are aimed at sort of addressing that and sort of slightly softening those spaces, making them feel a little bit more welcoming, using arts and culture to do that, and sort of almost directing people as to how to interact with the space in a different way. So yeah, you'll see quite a lot more of that coming along, and that is in a response to it, as I touched on, sort of the changing visitor relationship with the space. Whereas previously, honestly, we were a bit quieter at the weekends, and the midweek would be where we visit, and because we've seen that change, we're really keen to embrace that and continue to make those spaces feel more human scale and more welcoming and attractive for families and local people as well. As if that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and I can see. I was just wondering how. Yeah, that is obviously a focus, and it's interesting. And the other thing was, culturally, historically, Manchester's obviously got a rich history of culture, including, I think, the Happy Mondays came from Salford.
Yeah.
So, have they ever been down there? And I mean,
I imagine they've been on the BBC, but we have got a kind of really rich cultural and musical heritage both in Manchester and Salford. Music and sport are like, we're literally a stone's throw away from Old Trafford, and Lancashire Cricket Ground. So again, we're working with Lancashire Cricket Ground actually this summer to activate the piazza with some events for kids as part of the play activity. But I think really the key thing for me is working in partnership to deliver activity with that space with those local cultural partners is the way to do it. And that's why the history piece is coming in as part of one of our brand pillars, is around that incredible history and archive we've got of the ship canal. So I think that genuinely connects people to the place with the the kind of history of the Industrial Revolution and the workers on the docks.
No,
so we'll do more of that.
Yeah, it looks like there's still an incredible amount of opportunity there as well along the ship canal. And
yeah, there is, all the way to Liverpool, and out, we're sort of bleeding into the city centre almost that way. It's kind of overwhelming, the opportunity and the development actually in Manchester at the minute. But yeah,
really, really exciting and interesting day.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Dominic. Hazel, let's go back to you and see if rebooting has brought your sound back. Fingers and toes crossed.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah. We can.
Yeah.
Perfect.
You need to sing us a song now, I think, now that you're back.
Yeah. Sorry if you have to repeat anything because I had to dip in and out, but
don't worry.
I mean, great presentation, and I think my experience of Media City goes back the full 11 years, to be honest with you, because I worked in the area 5 to 10 years ago. So I've seen the transition and probably not been back in the last few years, and went back again last week. So I think what's really impressive is the programme that you've lured onto the place, and that was clear in the presentation as well. And I suppose maybe it's a bit of a tricky question in a way, because it's such a huge place compared to some of the other shortlists, and a place like Media City requires the critical mass, and obviously the building plots are huge. It's obviously they form streets, but it's not so much about streets as it's about building plots, because we're talking about huge recording studios and things which are massive buildings in themselves. So I suppose my understanding of the place over the early years was that you'd created the square and the gardens and a real focus to where the sense of place was, aside from the kind of compass radiating streets that you talked about, and I thought I felt that it's really clear that the pandemic has maybe been a positive thing in instilling more and more of a programme onto that space, which is bringing communities in and not relying on people in offices in the area itself. So I guess a really tricky question is, do you think you would have done it any differently if we'd have had a pandemic 12 years ago, to how it's evolved over the last couple of years, and how the programme of use has got layered onto it? And clearly there's a real contrast, because you've got these massive building plots, and then you've got the success of the box on the docks and small greenhouse structures. So quite a difficult question.
No, it's interesting, because actually I was there from the start as well. I worked on the BBC move, so I've sort of seen the way it's changed and the change in visitor relationship too. But I actually think we would have had to, but I think the pandemic's accelerated, because I think I think possibly when Media City set out, the sort of way that people used offices and workspaces was different. And I think there's a real place first, you know, when people are looking for requirements for new office spaces. I think, look, you can get like a beautiful office anywhere now, really. And I think it's got to be much more about the rounded place and what the place does first. And I think we've kind of cottoned on to that, and through the place brand work that we did and the research we actually did just before the pandemic, and then we looped back around and revisited as a result, and we've kind of accelerated it. But I think, yes, we would have done it anyway, but I think all the pandemic's done is say that changing relationship with how you know, Generation Z and what they want to see in terms of places that have got sustainability and social value at the heart, and where they want to work and how they want to work. And the way kind of businesses are looking about health and well-being being really important. I think that's all just accelerated as a result of the pandemic. So I think, yes, we would have done it anyway, but I think perhaps the speed we've done it at has been accelerated by the pandemic. And actually, I think we've got some things to capitalise on as a result. I think those huge spaces that we've got that sometimes previously felt a bit like, oh gosh, you know, quite difficult to programme, have actually been a real virtue to us as people have looked for that open space in the green and the blue, and perhaps the city centre, you know, particularly for families, has felt slightly less attractive through the pandemic and beyond, with all the work happening there. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I think it does. We could have an hour debating it, but
yeah, we could. It's really
it's a very interesting case study post-pandemic, and I guess just to finish off, the neighbouring communities that you mentioned, has the acceleration helped embed it in its community more?
I think absolutely. Like looking at the footfall data and anecdotally seeing the change in relationship with, like, you know, we have kind of roller skaters, scooters on the piazza in the evening now, which we just didn't have before. I think absolutely local. And I've just had some transport data this morning with sort of how people are using the tram to come into Media City. It's much more local journeys. It's massively accelerated the local journeys into Media City that the council's just shared this morning. So I think absolutely. And I think that's taken a long time, like to get to there, to feel like it's a place for local people. And I'm really keen that we continue that, and things like the summer of play that we're doing and working with local summer holiday camps to bring those kids in is, yeah, I've definitely seen that change, and we've got to keep on with that. I think, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christopher. We've got time for a super quick last question. If you have one that you'd like to add.
I'll be as quick as I can. Josie, great presentation, and can't wait to get up to Salford and
let us know when you come in.
As a result, the one thing that kind of perked my ears was you were talking about the social value and sustainability groups, and I just wondered if there were any particular initiatives or outcomes that you wanted to highlight as a result of those groups.
Yeah, so the work they've done with the Salford Food Bank has been really interesting. So that group have come together to raise money across the estate and encourage people to do donations to Salford Food Bank at a time when they need it more than ever. But actually, one particular initiative that we really worked in partnership on was a sort of festival of wellbeing. So we did Wellbeing Live in May around mental health awareness group, and that was because the stats for the kind of creative media and tech industry in mental health are appalling anyway, but actually the pandemic's massively heightened that. So we worked together and we delivered a week of activity for anyone that lives, works, studies at Media City, virtual activity that was around lots of different topics, from anxiety and depression to mindful drinking, to all the things that the pandemic's kind of brought more into focus. And that was supported by Host, which is our kind of skills and technology hub, the BBC, Bupa, who are based on site as well, and that's going to have a legacy now. So we're going to do wellbeing live events across the year and an annual festival. So it's a fairly new group, to be honest. It's been in operation for about 8 months, and that was the first probably kind of initiative where they all came together and ran something around mental health and wellbeing. So yeah. But there's a lot. It's grassroots, which makes it even better from my perspective. There's about 40 members, and they're really motivated. And we've appointed chairs out of the group, so they sort of monitor it. But yeah, very happy to provide more detail on that.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think that's a brilliant note to end on. Thank you ever so much, Josie, for that fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
We enjoyed it. We'll have to move on, unfortunately, to our next project, but we look forward to hearing what they have to say. We're continuing in the media theme. We're heading off now to Television City, Television Centre, Work City, which of course everybody will be familiar with. Since opening in 2018, Television Centre has opened up to the public while continuing to be a place of work. and BBC makes use of the refurbished studios, but also uses the development's external spaces to film some of the nation's most watched and loved TV shows in the open air, overlooked by residential apartments and watched by the general public. So to introduce us to this entry, let's welcome Lloyd Spencer and Paul Monaghan from Allford Hall, Monaghan Morris. That's a tongue twister. Lloyd and Paul, you've 10 minutes to tell your story to the judges. Take it away.
Thank you. I'll just quickly share my screen. Is that sharing?
Yes, it is, Lloyd.
Perfect. Okay, we'll go. So very apt to come from Josie's conversation in terms of Media City, and starting sort of the background to that being Television Centre is what we're going to talk to today. Television Centre, located at White City, the home of BBC Television all the way up until about 2015 when they finally vacated the site. But we'll talk a little bit more about the retention of BBC on the site and BBC worldwide and all the other facilities that are there within the BBC home and television making that still continues today. Television Centre then located on Wood Lane within the heart of White City, connected within the kind of boroughs of Notting Hill and Holland Park, sort of coming in on the east to there, Shepherd's Bush to the south, and Hammersmith Park, which kind of plays a big part to the kind of setting of the place as well, just to the west of it. It was originally, the site was originally the home of the 1908 Olympics. Along with that, an extent of the of pavilions built, expressing and showing all that was great of the British Empire through the Franco-British exhibition, which generated a number of white pavilions. So effectively, be them stucco, tiles, white bricks or marble, these kind of white pavilions were kind of erected over the site area, and effectively coined and named the place White City. In the birth of television and radio, and sort of growing space of Alexandra Palace and needing for a kind of new factory of television that was coming through then in those days, 1949, Graham Dorban was commissioned to design and look forward to that new factory of television. And classically, in that kind of architect's way, he scribbled this diagram on the back of a envelope on the 1st of December 1949, and as it believes, sort of 10 days later, has actually come up with this plan diagram, which is a diagram which worked incredibly efficiently and still stands true today in terms of the reinvention that we've generated for the site. So coming in from Wood Lane, kind of ring road round, which serves all of the studios and all of the buildings. Tight in the centre is the Helios, which then did hold then at the administration and production side of the building, which then was a kind of tight circle for feeding all the studios out from it, and then satellite buildings coming away from that in terms of scenery workshops and restaurants and such like. And it was the home to television that was brought about by public participation, which was the kind of key factor of that. So it was kind of for the people, with the people, and television of the people, and it was famous. So kind of classic acts that were being shown there in terms of David Bowie, Rolling Stones, and everything else. In terms of our intervention then to the building, there were a number of key measures that, when we came across the building and started to look at the master plan, sort of held true for us. One of those was the main one was to not change the iconic view of the existing building and its view from Wood Lane, that kind of fascia kind of being kind of well recognised face to the building, reinforcing the diagram and retaining that as much as possible, along with the interventions that we were bringing, and holding on to that architectural heritage, of which there was many, from small mosaics to tiles to fabulous staircases to actually television production in its own right. Holding on to that BBC heritage and bringing some of that heritage, however we could, into the redevelopment of the building, so keeping some of its history going. And one of the biggest moves, I think, which kind of completely reinvented the place and the space, was opening the space to the public, having had secure doors on the building, just through the nature of BBC and what they do within the building and within the site. That was always a kind of a restriction to the development of the site. So opening the place to the public was incredibly important. And along with such dry things as counter-terrorism, which were very much needed in the redevelopment because of the occupation of BBC and retention of BBC on the site, we worked tirelessly to create a permeable plan that was a safe plan that felt an open and inviting plan to the place. So that was one of the key things. With good public space that was, as Emma said, is creating active open space that is utilised by all parties, including BBC and the television studios and studio production. A full mixed use scheme, and I think one of the kind of treasures of the site and the development of the master plan is that there is no one dominant use on the site, and I think that helps create a very good kind of rub and vibration across the different uses, between it being office, production, television, residential, of which there are 450 units in the first phase of the retained buildings, along with retail, restaurants, gyms, and cinemas and other uses, which in turn created the vision. So there is a kind of visualization early on of our thoughts towards how we would reimagine television centre, and I think hopefully you'll see from the pictures coming forward that kind of held true. The existing building, it was Grade 2 listed, working tirelessly with Historic England. We were able to actually merit the kind of important parts of the building, and that enabled us to redevelop rightfully for a sort of new place that was fit for purpose. And that did mean an extent of demolition, but that then led way to the new proposed master plan, which I'll talk a little bit further about. Starting with the welcome lane, which effectively, back in the original days, this was a very sort of car-centric site. I mean, the nature of its use and the people that were arriving to the site and the kind of secrecy of that meant it was a very kind of guarded site and car-centric site. And it still is today to some extent, but we've worked very hard to ensure that we keep vehicular access and uses away from the public spaces as much as possible, but we work in that accessibility and we work in the design correctly. So starting with the welcome lane, which effectively holds actually an extent of taxis and cars, which creates a buffer both in terms of environment and microclimate before getting to the actual public spaces, to the courtyards and the forecourt proper. So that kind of creating a kind of a pleasant buffer to that, but holding all the cars at bay, and then the service ring road kind of doing the rest of the work for us. Into the forecourt, again, as I've said, the forecourt being a sort of car-centric position for the executives coming in. In the leaving of BBC coming from the site, there was a realization of festivity that could happen within the forecourt, which led way for us to think about how we might reimagine that forecourt coming forward. And a lot of that still holds true today. So a flexible space, creating hard standing, a green space with different uses, and then a canopied space with a foresting, and those kind of levels of privacy kind of recess back into the building as you keep going in, as you get towards the Helios courtyard. The ramping there coming up, creating DDA kind of compliant and accessible routes through, so taxis can drop people off at edges and parts of the buildings as needed. But all of those different constraints of the space and the landscaping, working with Gillespie's to develop those. So different qualities of spaces, so people can linger, but activities could also happen. So it's a place for events and a place for vibrancy to come into there. That's then connected to the studios, which, as mentioned, is very vitally important in terms of the use of the site and bringing the history of the site back in. But that forecourt then is utilised quite in a vibrant manner with good weather when we have it, is utilised by the production and the shows that go on inside the studios, coming out and filming of that within the forecourt. So creating atmosphere towards the participants coming in there as well. Into the Helios courtyard, slightly more private use there. So working in the privacy of those, iconic backdrop to what is kind of remembered buildings with residential surrounding that. We should create a great place to live, to work, to play, with Soho House at the top of it, but respecting the past, bringing back the people and creating a place for now. So the infrastructure that came into the forecourt works for all of those events, which we didn't always think about at the time, but they work now. Thinking for our future in terms of sustainability, so bees and honey for residents and people alike across the state, but effectively creating an iconic destination, a new iconic destination for West London, and reflecting that across the broader spectrum of its environment.
Lovely, thank you very much indeed, Lloyd. Really, really appreciate it. And I think we may bring Paul in for some of the Q&A as well, I think. So I'm now going to bring our judges back in. So if we can have all of your cameras switched on, and we're going to start with you, Christopher. So the first question goes to you.
Hi, Lloyd. Hi, Paul. Thanks for the presentation, and really great to kind of hear all about the kind of the evolution of Television Centre. I managed to pop over yesterday, and having kind of seen all that's going on in White City, I just wondered kind of how have you found the interfacing with the other scheme, the St James scheme across the road with Westfield, the development there? Has that been a challenge or a benefit to what's been happening at White TV Centre?
Well, our clients, Mitsui Fudosan and Stanhope, own the other Media City north of the site as well, which which is the old Allies and Morrison building, which is now new offices. We were ahead of all of those developments in a way. So St James's, the Berkeley Homes thing, was beginning to be designed. But there was always an idea of creating a bridge across the road, which you probably saw if you went there.
Yeah.
And that was something I think shared by the developers, but made a much faster connection to Westfield, and brought the arches, which is part of that scheme's elements together. But I think the architecture is very different. I mean, that is high-end housing in I wouldn't say standard way, because it's Patel Taylor did it, who are very good architects, but whereas I think the housing and the mixed use nature of Television Centre is slightly quirkier. Everything had to be slightly different because Westfield had Jamie's Italian when it was around, and Pizza Express and all of those, so we need to think of different types of restaurants, different types of offers that weren't in Westfield. And a different place to live. And I think mostly what people wanted in terms of the housing element was a place where people would live. So everyone who bought flats there pretty much lives there. Yeah. And what we didn't realise, those of you who do residential know that when you get agents involved, you spend years doing analysis of who's going to live there. And lots of it was about families with kids, and of course what they never realised is most of it is downsizers from the surrounding areas, because they liked the big flats, they loved the area, they liked Soho House and the gym, they liked the restaurants and the cinema, and in a way you do all this research and it's a completely different demographic that come and live there, but it's lived in properly. And that's what I think Stanhope, because they're not a house builder, they are a developer, think about a space for the next 100 years rather than the year you build it and then sell it. And so it's and Broadgate Estates now look after the whole estate, so there's constant activities going on. And so very much talking with the other landowners, but I think Stanhope were the predominant owner, really.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. I'd like to bring in Dominic next, who also has visited.
Yeah, I've visited here, and in fact, I grew up on the Silchester estate opposite Latimer Road tube station, so very familiar with the site, and remember fondly Steptoe & Son and things like that being filmed in the local area, and that sense of citadel at that point that you just never could get in unless you magically got invited onto top of the Pops or something like that. Yeah. So it's amazing to see it open up and to be able to walk around it and see that history. I was really interested in the sort of how the kind of private and the public managed in terms of the events and the sort of the people that live there. How much are they? Is there attention there, or is it there for that reason to be part of that?
Well, I'll tell you what, Dominic. When we were thinking about having television studios with live audiences and people living there, and at the time I remember going there, it was very exciting at first, you know, because I probably like you had the glamour of watching Top of the Pops, Blue Peter, and you know, there you were, and there was the Strictly sets being moved around, and Strictly at that time was such a big, sorry, it still is, but such a big phenomenon for the building at the time. And we went to the Jules Holland show, and I was thinking, how the hell are we going to have Muse playing at 11 o'clock at night live and people buying flats next door? And you know what? It's worked so brilliantly, having a television centre with Good Morning, with Loose Women, the Anton Deck Show, Top Gear, the building's on constantly on television, and people are constantly coming in, the audience of a completely mixed demographic, and it makes the place lively all day rather than one of these developments where there's no one there all day. So I think it's worked pretty well. There doesn't seem to be a tension, Lloyd. I mean,
No,
you go there as much as me.
No, I don't think there is a tension. I think everybody that lives there and everybody that bought there bought into the idea of it. I mean, to the extent that actually a number of the apartments around the Helios were bought by people whose desks used to be in those places at BBC. So I mean, their kind of fondness for the building is massive. And then equally, the people that work there is very kind of media centric. So they envelope themselves in the world that they know, and so I think it works really well. It's a kind of choreographed thing, you know, but not pretentiously. It just kind of naturally happens, and I think everybody gets excited and enjoys it. It's like being around an art centre, in a kind of populist type way, you know. So it's really, so I think everybody loves it.
I think one of the things we were worried about, Dominic, was, I mean, I think at first our thing was, how do you take Steptoe and Son, Fawlty Towers, you know, almost everything we remember from, you know, Monty Python, and do you play that within the building? And actually we might have actually, you know, in the branding and the graphics and being quite witty in the way, you know, some of our clients. Stanhope were always, no, let's celebrate the making of television. Let's celebrate, because if we're just looking at that, we're looking at a historic building that's about celebrating history, and what we want to do is look forward as well. And I always thought that was a really key decision. It was about, so the building doesn't really do sort of a picture of a TARDIS when you walk in. It doesn't do anything like that. Soho House does it incredibly well. They have people like Peter Blake doing a Blue Peter set and things, so that they have the round window, the triangular in by the performing area for play school, but they do that very well. But that's more an entertainment place, I think. And what's great is now it is known again. Because I thought, look, to me, seeing that building is really famous, that iconic view, but to my kids it's meaningless. But you know what, it means something to them again because of its exposure on television. So I thought that was really clever of Stanhope, not to just take that obvious thing and have Monty Python writing and have Fawlty Tower or funny names. We could have done all that, but I don't think it would have worked.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you. And we have a couple of minutes left. So Hazel, if you have a question, I know you're of course familiar. If whether there's anything you would like to ask.
Hi Lloyd. Hi Paul.
Hi.
Thanks for that. I mean, I think it's been it's a challenge, isn't it, in some ways, because you're dealing with an iconic structure and an iconic form, and creating a place from that. And I think that the sort of reversal of that vibrancy outside of the studios is really successful. I suppose just one last question is going back to the connections beyond, because you had the challenge of that very iconic form that almost cups the space, and there is the Westfield connection, obviously, to the east, and then there's the White City residential community to the northwest, I think it is, and I just wondered how challenging it was to draw that community to the site when it had been this closed, gated site in the past.
I think the only thing that we ever thought about was when QPR play, and that might be a shortcut through. and the police were concerned about that. That was the only time. Apart from anything else, it's very perfect. But the rear part of the site hasn't quite been fully connected yet, because that's phase 2, and that's likely to happen next year. So we haven't quite got the thorough connection. But it was literally that was the only worry about any connections. But as you know, there's a sort of street with quite expensive houses to the south. To the north, there's a big massive council estate. To the west, it's full of council estates. And I'd like to think everyone enjoys that public space when they put the tennis on, when they have a band playing, when they launch Strictly, and all of those things. It's open to the public, and they are welcomed. But yeah, I think that's the only thing I would say, really. I don't know, Lloyd.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Paul's right in the sense that there are a lot of good positive connections already, and I think the adjoining estates, all come in and sort of filter into that because it's completely perforate. But the further connections are continuing to still grow. So there's work to do, projects on the railway arteries, which could link you all the way to Shepherd's Bush and create a new cycle network to Shepherd's Bush. That's still in the making. And then as the kind of satellite buildings come around the second phases, then those other connections will come as well.
And one thing we didn't really explain at all in our presentation was the celebration of good design. And Stanhope have always, as you know, Hazel, celebrated good designers, good architects. So in that scheme, within the apartments, we have Phil Coffey, we have Haptic, we have David Archer Humphreys, sorry, and we have Morris and Company designing one of the buildings that's going up at the moment. We have McQueen and Lavington, we have DRMM, and we have Michael Reich. So we have 3 Sterling Prize winning firms designing buildings in the master plan. And I think, well, that's not a completely unique idea. I think it emphasises this placemaking, and really with Steve Richards at Gillespie's holding the whole thing together with his design. So I think it's, while we're very much a backdrop, and I always say about the spaces, in a way, our key, why we won the competition in the first place, is that it didn't look any different to what it was in the old days. So we won by not being there, like being the bridesmaids. And I still like it when you go around the building, you don't know if you're in a new bit or an old bit, and that was intentional, because the flavour of the old building was fantastic. So I think that blend, rather than doing that architectural thing when you're in the new bit, it very much is new. This isn't like that. You could imagine that it's always been there, and I think that particularly goes for the public spaces, which, I always think the best public spaces are the ones that feel like they've been there 100 years. So that's all I'd say.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. The clock has been ticking, and our time has come to an end. Lloyd, Paul, thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it, and the judges are going to have a tough half hour deliberating after this. That of course concludes the presentations for the place of the year. So thank you to all of our presenters from this morning, and also to our dedicated judging panel, and to our audience members for their participation as well. As I say, I'm now going to be taking the judges away into a quiet room so that we can deliberate and debate, and they can decide on the winner. And their decision is going to remain top secret until 3 o'clock or thereabouts on Friday, when the online award ceremony begins, and we will finally find out who has won that coveted golden pineapple. For our audience, you can now go in and enjoy our lunchtime talk, which is with author Owen Hadley. That's at 1 o'clock, and it's on the rise and fall and rise again of brutalism and the city as a social project. So one not to miss, I think. Between sessions, you can also feel free to join a table and meet some of the other people who are here in the social lounge. So do take that opportunity as well. So thanks once again to all of our presenters today, to our judges and to our audience. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.